Hi, this is Fernando and welcome to Disruptive World. In this episode, we're going to be looking at Norway's EV market over the years to see what that might mean to the world's transition to sustainable mobility. This is extremely important since a massive part of valuation models for companies such as Tesla depend on forecasts of regional and world sales of electric vehicles this decade. What has been the evolution of the Norwegian EV market? What has contributed to its growth? How well does this follow a typical S-curve? And what is the current state of EV market? Lots of questions to answer, so let's dig right in. Norway retains the title to the world's largest EV fleet per capita, currently standing at 90 light-duty plug-in electric vehicles per 1,000 inhabitants. In more concrete terms, this means that in 2020, Norway had almost 500,000 electric cars on the roads, which represent over 15% of all cars. In fact, in 2020, Norway became the first country in the world where the sales of electric vehicles surpassed those of internal combustion engine or ICE cars. And EVs now account for about 3/4 of all light vehicles sold. Despite being a large energy producer and one of the world's largest exporters of oil, Norwegian governments have actively supported the introduction of zero-emission vehicles since 1990. Incentives include an exemption from vehicle fees such as purchase taxes and the 25% value-added tax. Apart from these financial incentives, owners of these vehicles also enjoy other non-financial perks, such as being able to drive on bus lanes and access to certain city streets and parking lots not open to internal combustion engines. In the last years, Norwegian governments have decided to start rolling back some of these incentives, although many remain in place to this day. So let's look at the evolution of the Norwegian EV market. First of all, a short explanation of terms. When doing analysis on electric car markets, one often finds terms such as electric cars, EV, BEV, PHEV, HV, or NEV. In fact, if you go on a site such as Wikipedia, you will find more than 15 types of electric vehicles. BEV or BEV vehicle is a battery-only vehicle, such as the ones Tesla produces. PHEV refers to a plug-in hybrid electric vehicle such as Toyota's Prius Prime or the Chevy Volt. For our purposes on this channel, we will always use electric cars or EVs as inclusive of BEVs and PHEVs. Unless explicitly stated, we will not consider hybrid cars, otherwise known as HVs. The reason for this is that hybrid vehicles have a much smaller battery with a very limited range, usually less than 50 kilometers. And the combustion engine kicks in at low speeds, somewhere between 20 and 50 kilometers per hour. As with the hybrid sail steamships of the past, they are a stopgap measure. We will probably not do any episodes on this segment unless asked to by popular demand, as they will not be a factor in the future of automobiles. Similarly, for the short term, we will ignore neighborhood electric vehicles. Let's have a look at Norway's numbers since 2011. The graph on the right represents growth in battery electric vehicles, and the one on the left represents the growth of plug-in vehicles. The thing that stands out right away is that although PHEV had a good start at the beginning, they are quickly becoming obsolete as BEV growth takes over. If we look at the combined growth, we can see this exploding to 75% of all cars sold in Norway by 2020. Over the period since 2011, when electric car sales were 1.4% of total sales, EV sales have increased by an average of 55% each year. The adoption of most products follow a trajectory known as the S-curve, which loosely has 4 phases. Phase 1 is a deception phase. Here there is a low, almost linear growth rate. Phase 2 is the exponential phase. Growth here reaches fast and ever-increasing growth. Stage 3 is the inflection phase. Growth here reduces as the market begins to saturate. And finally, stage 4, which is the maturity phase, sees slower growth to more average numbers. Now let's add a line representing a typical S-curve, which tends to start flattening out at about 65 to 80% of market penetration, and include a forecast for Norway as the market saturates. We can see that for Norway, sales actually grew at 80% rate for the first 7 years, until a 30% market penetration rate was reached, and then grew at an average rate of only 24% for the last remaining years until reaching 75% market penetration. Growth in the coming years should stabilize over the next 3 to 4 years as market penetration reaches 100%. Where do we stand today in terms of EVs on a global level? Figuring out world sales on anything can be complicated, and EV sales are no exception, especially because some media confuse things by not stating clearly if they are talking about EV numbers or just BEV numbers. The current estimates put EV, that's battery vehicles and plug-in hybrid sales, at about 3.2 million units for the year 2020. That's about 3% of total vehicle sales. You may also have heard the figure 2.1 million, which is actually the number of battery-only vehicles or BV sales. As a percentage of total sales, this is where Norway was in 2012, only 9 years ago. But will EV sales respond in a similar way? Norway had some important factors leading to the acceleration of EV adoption. First, the strong government incentives. Second, it was a small country in size and population. This helped because charging infrastructure was easier to put in place, and EV car production was able to meet demand, even with battery production constraints. Finally, Norway has a social predisposition to renewable energy. It also had things that were most likely an impediment. First, few models to choose from. 3 of the most popular EVs in 2020, the e-tron, the Model 3, and the ID.3, were not available 4 years ago. Also, high battery costs, which means high car prices versus ICE cars. This last factor was offset by government generous incentives, making prices of EVs competitive with ICE cars. Overall, our analysis shows that although incentives in the largest world markets may not be as strong as they have been in Norway, this should be offset given that prices of EVs are falling and that the largest automotive manufacturers such as VW, Hyundai, and GM are betting on the transition to EVs by offering an increasing variety of models in all segments. Given these assumptions, and even moderating expectations from 55% annual growth to 50%, this means that globally, we should be close to an inflection point of 53 million EVs delivered by 2027. In fact, if the global market shows the kind of growth that Norway has, it would mean that you should expect around 5 million EV car deliveries in 2021 and up to 20 million by 2023. The only real constraint, which is not a factor in the case of Norway, would be the capacity to make batteries. One final conclusion stemming from the Norwegian experience is that eventually plug-in hybrids will eventually go the route of their HV brothers. Even if so-called green regulations allow these types of vehicles to be sold past 2035, the fact that they combine electrical and internal combustion components will make them much more expensive than all electric vehicles. As always, if you've enjoyed this video or found it helpful, please support the channel by dropping a like. Also, make sure you subscribe if you're new here and hit that notification bell. Keep tuning in to find insights for business and investment opportunities. It is a disruptive world after all.